Welcome to Step by Step, where we take a deep dive into specific steps in the decisions application. Today, our focus is going to be on the Get Data Pair by Name step, as well as the Get Data Pairs for JSON Object Properties step. These are two steps that can go hand in hand and really work well together, so we're going to take a look at them both together in this video. So first of all, the Get Data Pair by Name step allows users to pass in a name and receive the matching object that's paired with it. The get data pairs for JSON object properties is just a one way that you can get those data pairs to pass into the get data pair by name step. But then essentially it'll just pass out whatever is paired with the name. So then you can get that specific value, whatever it is that you need. This can be useful if you have things like you have a bunch of JSON data and you want to help search through that JSON data to find something specific, or maybe you have a large list of pairs of things and you want to find one specific pair from that list, or you need a way to organize or grab some specific element when you have a large list of things or a bunch of different data pairs together. It's a really good way to grab that one specific item that you're looking for. And we have the ability to do that completely dynamically or with some mix of constants as well. Now, a couple errors that you can see with this sometimes is, first of all, we'll talk about, and we'll show it when we actually look at the example, is what happens if you have no data. Well, if you're trying to search for something and that doesn't exist, what will happen? Will it throw an error? Will it just pass on through? That kind of thing. We'll talk about a couple of the intricacies of JSON structures as well. So what happens if you have a complex or nested data pairs? Something like the JSON you see on the right side here can be very complex. So what happens if I try to get data pairs from that? As well as any issue with JSON structure when you're trying to use JSON related steps could potentially cause issues. So you have to be very careful about notation when we're looking at JSON. So let's take a look at these errors and how the steps work in decisions. So here I am in decisions, and this is just a little flow that I've built to demonstrate the get data pair by name step and the JSON, grabbing the JSON values from it. So from here, what the get JSON data pairs for object properties is doing is it's just taking a JSON. So if I look at here, JSON text is my input. Here's a little JSON that just says the fruit is an apple, the size is large, color is red. Just kind of showing a quick little example here. And what this is going to do is it's going to output a list of data pairs. So it's going to output the data pairs that can come from that JSON value. Next, we have the get data pair by name step. This has two inputs. The first input is a list of data pairs. So it's expecting you to pass in a list of data pairs first so that it can actually look through those data pairs for something. And then it's got a name. And so this name is going to look for a specific name in those data pairs. And it's going to output the data pairs with that information that matches that name. So whatever that name is, it's going to grab that whole data pair and output it. So then you could use that name or the thing that's paired with it later on in your process if you need to. The data pairs is a list of data pairs. It's what it's expecting. So you can build array if you're expecting just one data pair, although if you're expecting one data pair, it wouldn't make sense to use this step because there's only one data pair there. But just in case you aren't familiar with a data pair, it's essentially just made up of a name and an output value that's paired with it that could be of any object type. So whatever that is, that's what a data pair is made up of. So it's just a name and the object that's paired with it. So that's simply all you need to look at from there. But here we're getting that list from my JSON data. So in case you need to look for it. Now, get data pairs by name. Those datas are easily found under data and data pairs. There's a number of other steps that you could use as well. So if you don't want to necessarily get your data pairs from some JSON object, you can create them yourself. So there are logical data pairs, which has the pair being a Boolean, number data pairs for decimals, objects if you just have a general object. So you can create data pairs yourselves as well, but these are single data pair creation steps. So you would need to use like a for each or something to if you're trying to build up a bunch of things to get that list. But if you already have a list, you can send it right in, and this JSON step is a great way to do that for you, depending on where you have the data coming from. So something to keep in mind. In my flow here, my last create data is just a string text, just to kind of show you if I decided to grab from the output of this get data pair by name, I could grab the name if I wanted to, or I could just grab the output value if I need to grab it. So that's what this create data step is doing. It's just grabbing it so I can look at the final output and whatever it grabbed. So with that, let's go ahead and test this. So I have JSON passing in some data about fruit, and I'm looking specifically for the fruit data pair with my get data pair by name. So you can see if I run it, we can take a look at the JSON text. So I can see it's reading the JSON, and then it's going to take that text and it's going to output each of the data pairs. So I've got a data pair of fruit and apple. I've got the data pair for size large. I've got the data pair for color red. So I've got that. My get data pairs by name step is now going to take in those data pairs, and it's going to search for the name that I chose as the input. Now this, I set it as constant just for demonstration purposes, but this could be dynamic. You could have that name changing depending on the process, and it could be going through in a number of different ways, so that could be dynamic coming from some other variable. But simply we're looking for fruit, so our goal then should be to pass out that data pair. And if we look at the output, looks like it did. It grabbed the name fruit and its corresponding output value and is passing out that entire data pair. So then my create data step, which is just looking for the a text value that's just grabbing the output value, so not the name, should say apple, and there we go. We've got apple. So perfect, nice and simple. It is grabbing that data right for us as we need. Now, just a couple things then that are going to be important to note to take a look at potential errors and things. And that first is whenever you're using JSON, you always want to make sure that your JSON data is valid. So if I just throw an extra curly brace out here, then this JSON is going to be not structured properly. It is going to recognize that as looking at some extra additional text, and it's going to throw me an error. So if your JSON isn't up to snuff, has some issues in it, has extra characters or some kind of configuration is incorrect in the way that it is written, then you will get an error message telling you that. And here it is actually telling me, hey, there's additional text encountered after it read the JSON content. And it tells me exactly the line and the position that it was in as well. So it does kind of give you that information, general idea of where the error is. In this case, I added an extra curly brace, but it could be anywhere else if there's extra curly braces, which can kind of easily happen if you have more complex or longer JSON structures. Now the second error that I had mentioned before is, well, what happens if your JSON is more complex? So I have an example of a pretty complex JSON data that we're going to put in here. Since our first example was nice and simple, what happens if you have a really large JSON uh, structure that you want to utilize here? So here we've got an example of something that utilizes concept of some kind of quiz questions, maybe like a trivia game or something. And so we've got a quiz with a sport related question. Question 1 under the sports category has questions, options, and their final answer. Then we've got a math category. Question 1 has its questions, its options, and its answer. And there's another one with a question, options, answer. Right? So there's a number of different things here, and it's pretty complex of a JSON. And so what happens when you have something more complex is this step will read it and it'll output that data in a different way because of what it's trying to grab data pairs for. So it reads this whole thing and it sees quiz and says, okay, quiz is my name, and the data pair or the object that is paired with it is going to be all of this other stuff. It all jumbled into one big thing because it is only looking for a pair of items. So it grabs the name, it grabs the stuff that is paired with it, which is all of that other content. And so the more you have, the more complex of a JSON structure you have, the more difficult it can be to actually properly grab a data pair. So if I remove this quiz, so let me remove quiz here, and I do have to remove a curly brace at the end just so that I don't mess up the structure and have an error occur. If I run this again, now I don't have quiz anymore, but it recognizes sport and all of the content underneath sport as its pair. And then it recognizes math as another concept here, as another name, and all of the content that was under math as its pair, right? So now you can see as I kind of narrow it down a little bit, I can get a little bit closer to a more specific item looking within this. And so it's something you just always have to be careful of. So let's go ahead and just finish cleaning this up a little bit so it just looks a lot nicer. And we're just going to remove the sport and the question so that it's just this list of questions, options, and answers. And we're also going to completely get rid of this whole concept of math. So it's just this single sport question with the questions, the options, and the answers related to this. And so now if I run this and I look at the data, you'll see it'll correctly understand question as the name with the pairing of, here's that actual question, the options as a name, and the pairing of all of these options, this list, as its object that's paired with it. And then it has the answer name with the Houston Rockets final option connected with it. And so that's exactly what we're looking for here with how this data pairs option works. Now, the last error that I said that's important is what happens if I pass in data that this get data pair by name can't find, or it can't find what it's looking for. And so you can see here it's got the data pairs that we just took a look at, but it's looking for fruit because I never changed that since we had the previous JSON, right? Well, this one in this case is one of those decision steps that will not throw an error if it finds nothing. It's kind of like a fetch entities. If your fetch entities doesn't actually fetch something, it'll just go down the no results path to say that it didn't find anything. Similarly, your get data pair by name will just output no data. It'll output null data. So if I look at what this create data step was trying to grab, it grabbed nothing because it was not actually able to grab anything because there is no fruit name under the 3 data pairs that I passed into this particular step here. And so that will help me kind of figure out what exactly I need to look for. So maybe I actually just want the correct answer to be the name that I'm searching for. So I can go ahead and run that and look at my final answer here being Houston Rockets. And so then I got my solution. So there's a little dip into how you could use get data pairs for JSON with being careful about how the JSON works, as well as how to take in a list of data pairs and easily just search for a specific data pair within it. These steps work great hand in hand in order to help gather information so that you can then search for that data. And now that we've got the data that you want, you can go ahead and utilize it in whatever way you want. So whether you're getting that data from, some other complex thing, you need to grab something specific within it, and then you can go ahead and use it, whatever it is that you need that is available here. And now this will conclude our video over the get data pair by name and the JSON object properties. Thank you for watching.